Urgent question. Nigel Farage.
Thank you. To ask His Majesty's Government to give us an update on the situation with regards to the Diego Garcia American military base and the British Indian overseas territories, especially in the light of the recent comments of the American President.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, His Majesty's Government's objective has been and continues to be to secure the long-term effective operation of the military base on Diego Garcia. It is a base critical for our national security and helping to keep the British people safe. It is a key strategic military asset for both the United Kingdom and the United States. It has enabled our shared security for nearly 60 years. When we came into government, it was clear that our ability to maintain our interest and control in the base was under threat. So this government had to take action to protect our military advantage and to stop our adversaries gaining a hold in such a strategically important part of the world. Refusing to act, Mr. Speaker, could have exposed one of our most valuable military assets to China. So, like any responsible government would, we negotiated a deal to protect our interests. This government inherited a situation where the operation of the base was in immediate jeopardy, and negotiations on a transfer of sovereignty to Mauritius was well advanced by the previous government. The deal delivers on our objective of maintaining the secure, effective operation of this vital military base. It would allow us to operate this joint UK-US base as we have always done. Mr. Speaker, this House knows that the government worked tirelessly with the United States in developing and testing the treaty to ensure that it met our shared security needs. That is why it was supported by two administrations. This is why Secretaries Rubio and Hegseth, and indeed President Trump himself, came out so strongly in favour when the treaty was signed in May last year. I can assure this House nothing in the treaty has changed since the US administration gave their original endorsement of the deal, and we continue to work with Mauritius and the United States. Mr. Speaker, the UK government has great sympathy for the Garcian community. They feel a deep emotional connection with these islands. We have been clear in our regrets for the manner in which Chagosians were forcibly removed from the islands in the 60s and the 70s. We're working to resume a programme of heritage visits for members of that community. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work with both Mauritius and the United States on this agreement. As the Prime Minister has said, we have very close relations with the United States. That relationship matters profoundly, not just to our security, but to the prosperity and the stability that people here at home depend.
Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the situation in America has changed, as you know. The British government went around America and said a whole load of things, such as it was legally necessary to give away the Chagos Islands, which of course wasn't true. Do not give away Diego Garcia. Capital letters from the American president. He likes capital letters in his posts. And all the other arguments have been well rehearsed. The fact that it could cost us up to $50 billion. The fact that the Chagosians weren't just badly treated then, they're being badly treated now because they resettled Ile-de-Croix and they've got eviction notices from your government. But I can tell you this from my trip to the Maldives at the weekend. Something I hadn't realised, and I don't know whether the government knows it either. It is the Maldives that has the historical links with the Chagos Islands, both in terms of trade, in terms of archaeology. In fact, the islands, all the French did was rename the islands from the Maldivian language. There is no basis, historically, culturally, in any way, for Mauritius to have a claim on those islands. And the Maldives are upset for two reasons. One, there has been great stability in this region for decades. And what happens with this treaty, if it goes through, is you finish up with a turf war going on between India and China in the region, and that, indeed, has already started. And I wish to inform the government that we are just a few days away, in my opinion, from the Maldives issuing a counterclaim to the International Court of Justice to say if anybody has the right to the sovereignty of those islands, it is the Maldives and not Mauritius. And I would urge you to pause all of this.
Yeah. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member for Clacton suggests that we have gone around the American government. I have set out already in my response the extensive talks that we have had with both secretaries and indeed the President of the United States within recent months on this question. There is no question of going around the US government. The honourable member says, well, what has changed? Clearly, the view of the United States President may well have changed, but the treaty has not. We have discussed this treaty in great detail in this House. It is a treaty that emerges from talks initiated by the previous government and completed. Mr. Speaker, I would find it more plausible to hear chuntering from the benches on the other side from me were I not a diplomat in the Foreign Office during the period. They were negotiating this deal for 11 rounds. Exactly. I do understand that the members opposite, honourable and right honourable, wish to now distance themselves from the 11 rounds that they conducted. But let us at least...
Order. No one of us is sitting down, don't we? Look, people have put a UQ in. Others, members of this side, want to hear it. I want to hear it. I expect them to hear it. I expect them to hear it in silence. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Returning to the substance of the honourable member's question, I would just like to remind him that if he turned up with a selfie stick to RAF Waddington in Lincolnshire, a similarly sensitive military base, he would be turned away. I do not understand his surprise, or those who travelled with him, that when you sought over the weekend to film a video on a sensitive military site under the control of the UK. It is part of the British Indian overseas territories, as you know, and I would encourage the honourable member and indeed every member of the public to check British travellers.
Order. You keep saying you. I am absolutely not responsible about this filming or the involvement. Please, I'm being drawn into something I don't wish to be at this stage.
Mr. Speaker, I can only apologise for not seeking to draw you into such a flagrant incident of ignoring travel advice. The treaty is, as it was signed, it is going through both houses of Parliament. We are discussing this with our American colleagues. The fact that the honourable member sought to take a selfie video on the islands does not change any of those facts.
Chair of the Select Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Could the Minister please assure the House that international law will apply to Diego Garcia, either by way of the ownership or the use of Diego Garcia, either by our military or the Americans?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for the question. Of course, the UK government will abide by international law and will continue to do so.
The Minister, Wendy Morton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Labour's Chagos surrender is a shameful, unnecessary and reckless deal that leaves Britain weaker, poorer and less secure. This is not a legal necessity, it's a political choice made by a floundering Prime Minister, and it is British taxpayers who are left to pay the price. No other government would pay £35 billion to hand over its own sovereign territory and make its country less secure in the process. At a time when families are being squeezed, ministers are asking them to subsidise another country's budget, potentially funding tax cuts in Mauritius while taxes rise here at home. That's indefensible. So can the Minister confirm that no payments will be made under the treaty or the so-called strategic partnership unless and until ratification is fully complete? Because this is a national security crisis too. Diego Garcia is one of the most strategically vital military bases in the world, and yet ministers are pressing ahead before resolving the binding 1966 UK-US treaty, before addressing concerns raised by President Trump, and without guaranteeing that the lease can never collapse or be legally challenged. On UNCLOS, will he confirm that Article 298 provides an opt-out from compulsory dispute settlement for military activities, meaning this is a political choice, not an unavoidable legal trap? So I ask the Government, Will they suspend the bill until the legal position with the US is settled and any amendments have been scrutinised under CRAG? Will he confirm whether the Pelindaba Treaty would apply were Mauritius to take sovereignty? And if so, what ironclad safeguards protect our nuclear deterrent? And finally, what of the British Chagossians, some of them now on the islands? Can he guarantee there will be no forced removal and that their rights will be protected in full? Mr Speaker, British sovereignty is not for sale, and this House should not be bounced into surrendering it.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, as I said earlier, I would find the Conservative position more plausible had there not been 11 rounds of negotiations. The attempt from the other side, from both benches, to act as if though there was no issue here to be addressed, that the reason they started with 11 rounds was some sort of lack of focus. Well, if there was not an issue to address, I am not sure why you started. Why honourable members on the benches opposite began the negotiations. I can assure the House, Mr Speaker, that of course the passage of the treaty will go through the full process of Parliament in the usual way, and we are discussing these questions with the Americans in the usual way.
Grimston.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And can I say, risking the accusation of creeping, it's a great pity you aren't in charge of these negotiations. The deal we have come to, or are coming to, is inexplicable, both in principle and in costs to my constituents. And I very much doubt, at the time of the next general election, most Labour candidates, and indeed our manifesto, will point to the cost of £100 million a year and giving up ownership of these islands. Can I remind my honourable friend, and I'm sure he knows it off by heart, of page 120 of the Labour manifesto, which says, defending our security also means protecting the British overseas territories and Crown dependencies, including the Falklands and Gibraltar. Labour will always defend their sovereignty and right to self-determination. We haven't even consulted the Chagossians. Will my honourable friend not reconsider?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, I would not like to accept the connection being made between the British Indian Ocean territories and Gibraltar and the Falklands. We are four square behind the sovereignty of Gibraltar and the Falklands, who have repeatedly chosen to remain British, and long may it continue. So we are abiding by our manifesto commitments, Mr Speaker. The issues around the continued operation of the base have been discussed many times in this chamber. They are being scrutinised in both chambers as the treaty goes through the full process that Parliament would expect, and that will continue.
Dr Alpington, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I am acutely aware that this question comes in the aftermath of the honourable member for Clacton's attempted landing on the Chagos archipelago last week. And whilst I might admire the honourable member's audacity, I am deeply concerned that those actions trivialise what is indeed a deeply serious situation and potentially render the genuine grievances and injustices that Chagossians feel as a political backdrop to his social media feed. But I also have to acknowledge that the platform that the honourable member has only been created because of a vacuum that has been created by this government, because the wheels have undoubtedly fallen off the government's negotiations. They failed to secure the support and consent of Chagossians. They seem now also to have lost the support of the President of the United States, and whilst any one of those things might be considered unfortunate, the combination of the two of them looks deeply careless. So can I ask the Minister, please, what is the status of the negotiations right now? What is the latest position of the United States? Will they also take on our very long-standing concerns about the rights of Chagossians? There is clearly not widespread consent here. Will they take on the points that we've been making in amendment after amendment and recognise that Chagossians have the right to self-determine their own future? And can he also accept our concerns about the finances to ensure that Britain isn't left as a leaseholder of these islands if a deal goes ahead without a sitting tenant?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal Democrat spokesperson refers to amendments in the passage of the bill, and I'm sure he will understand why I will leave that to the Minister responsible for the bill conducting its passage. On the questions of the status of the negotiations, as I said, this is going through Parliament in the normal way. We are pausing in discussions with the United States, and those discussions continue.
Alex Barnett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know the member of Clacton has a number of additional jobs in combination with his responsibilities as an MP, but after his recent adventure, I hadn't realised small boat captain was amongst them. So maybe as a former Royal Marine, I can help him with his navigation. Can my honourable friend, the Minister, remind the member for Clacton what the penalty is for taking a trip to the British Indian Ocean Territory without a permit?
Minister.
My honourable friend paints the honourable member for Clacton as a captain, but I will decline the opportunity to be the sheriff on this occasion. The honourable member says stop the boats, but he did take a private jet there, which wasn't quite consistent with the small boat rhetoric that we usually hear from his party. I want to be clear that obviously there has been an attempt to land, indeed successful, on part of the British Indian Ocean Territory. That is not an area fit for human habitation. It is an area in which British travel advice is very clear that one should not travel to. This House has discussed on many occasions the sensitivity of this base, of these islands. I would encourage everybody listening at home to attend to our travel advice. It is there for a reason.
Right. Father of the House, Sir Edward Lee.
As always, this argument doesn't depend on gimmicks, but on a detailed examination of the law.
Exactly.
Now, on the 22nd of May, the government made clear in an answer that they were bound by the international law of the sea. But in a written question on the 12th of February, the government said that Article 298, an opt-out on UNCLOS, still applies. So the law remains the same as in 2003 and 2020. This was a specific question asked by the opposition spokesman. We now want an answer. This is desperately important because this opt-out is vital for the Falklands and for Gibraltar.
Minister.
The Father of the House will appreciate that I'm probably not in a position to give him the full detail that he would like on the provision of UNCLOS 298. I'm sure that as we discuss the passage of the bill, that this issue can be dealt with outside of the context of an urgent question.
Law.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I ask the Minister to engage in a short thought experiment? What would have been the reaction had senior members of the Labour Party in opposition, what would have been the reaction if they, at the time, had gone to lobby a foreign government against the best interests of the British Security Service? What would then the reaction of the right-wing media, who have made this their pet project, and the parties opposite be?
Minister.
It's a very good question from my honourable friend. Madam Deputy Speaker, when I was a diplomat, usually what we understood was that British politicians, that is, would not seek to undermine the British government overseas. We can argue in this place, but broadly we would try and keep our disputes on our own islands rather than going elsewhere to prosecute them. So I was surprised to see the vigour with which the benches opposite are seeking to undermine the process that we have been engaged in.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Will the government pause any steps in this matter until the judicial review proceedings being brought on behalf of the Chagosian people have been resolved one way or another in the High Court?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm endeavouring to answer the urgent element of the question and leave the question about the treaty and its passage through the two houses to that process, as that's my understanding of how best to deal with these questions. So in response to the question about the judicial review, which I understand is not urgent but related to the passage of the treaty through the two houses, then I'll leave the Minister who is responsible for that to respond in the usual way.
We need to lower the temperature. Everyone can be seated. The Minister can answer each question in full if he wishes to do so. John Slinger.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I've been doing the maths about the Reform Leader's weekend. 23 hours in the air in his private jet, perhaps run by Man of the People Airways. 12 hours on the ground. That's a day and a half or so when he could have been delivering leaflets and knocking doors in the Gorton and Denton by-election. So does the Minister share my concern for the Reform candidate, that he is missing out on the active support of the Honourable Member for Clacton and instead has to fall back on the support and endorsement of Tommy Robinson, aka Stephen Yaxley Lennon?
Minister.
I will leave the questions of how the Honourable Member for Clacton spends his time to the Honourable Member for Clacton. It was not a serious contribution to the debate on Diego Garcia and British Indian Ocean territories for him to travel there this weekend. I'm sure me and many of my colleagues will be in Gorton and Denton in the coming days.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's slightly bizarre to hear the Honourable Member for Clacton appear to be making arguments that it's the Maldives that should own Diego Garcia. But if I turn to the question from the Leader of the House, let's remove the wider bill, since the Honourable Member does not wish to discuss the wider bill. Very simply, does Article 298 of UNCLOS exempt military bases, yes or no? He's a diplomat, so he knows the answer.
Yes, yes.
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the reason why I don't really want to talk about the bill is it's not my bill and it's quite detailed and it's going through to both chambers of the House. I'm very happy to ensure that the relevant Minister writes and provides the answer to the issue.
Richard Ford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would agree with the Honourable Member for Clacton about the need for proper scrutiny of the vast sums of taxpayers' money that the government proposes to send to Mauritius. Yet I am puzzled that the Honourable Member for Clacton would travel all the way to the British Indian Ocean territory without a permit, given that Diego Garcia is a military base. The former leader of Reform UK and Wales is spending time staring at a security fence after pleading guilty to 8 counts of bribery. Does the Minister agree with me that the Honourable Member for Clacton can only be curious to know what it is to stare at a security fence?
Minister.
I suspect that's a question for the Honourable Member for Clacton. I think the practice of the former Reform leader in Wales is well known and understood, but having declined to comment on the bill, I think I'll have to decline to comment on the goings-on of the Reform Party.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Reports suggest that Foreign Office officials have been instructed to act as if this treaty is in full operation. Now, the reason why this is important is that we may be days or even hours away from military action against Iran. The key question here is, does the US then have to inform the UK and then inform Mauritius about wanting to use the base as a site for military operations? And if so, has the American government approached the UK about such use?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, for a reason long well established in this House, I won't be drawn on hypotheticals or ongoing military operations, but I would also like to reassure the House and the Honourable Member that the treaty is in force only once it has passed Parliament in the usual way.
Robert Shenrick.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the surrender of British sovereign territory began under my former party and has only been made worse by this Labour government. It is a damning indictment of the two old parties. The Minister represents the neighbouring town to me, and when he's not jet-setting, he presumably walks the same streets and talks to the same people. How can he hand on heart say that his constituents should spend up to £50 billion on this policy at a time when taxes are rising, bills are rising, and everyone in this country feels hard up?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I am appalled by the Honourable Member for Newark. Newark may well be a market town, but Lincoln is a city and has been for a very long time, and so I'd invite him to withdraw that remark. I don't receive a great deal of correspondence from constituents in Lincoln on this question. Mostly, my constituents in Lincoln prioritise Britain's national security. They understand, through our extensive history in Scampton, in Waddington, in Cranwell, of the importance that Lincolnshire plays in the UK's national security, and they would expect me and the rest of the government's ministers to prioritise that at all times.
David Reid.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think the vast majority of this House can agree that the arguments for giving away our Chagos Islands have been threadbare at best, which leads one to believe that there must be sensitive elements of this deal. So it's interesting to listen to one of the former SCDO special advisers, Ben Judah, and I quote, "Once you've been briefed, even partially, on what it does, i.e. the islands, the information gives you vertigo. Both now and in government, communicating the details to the public would be violating the Official Secrets Act." Now, given that this is going to cost the British taxpayer billions of pounds, does the Minister not believe that the government, it should be incumbent on the government to declassify some of this information so that us here in Parliament and the British public know what they're paying for?
No. I mean, we won't declassify what we do in RAF Waddington. We won't declassify what we do in defence of the realm. And it's not a serious proposition. There are obviously mechanisms through Parliament by which secret material can be considered through the ISC, and we'll continue to use that mechanism.
Andrew Rosendale.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I think we're getting to the crux of this issue. The Minister was in the Foreign Office when these negotiations were taking place. He should know that the Ile de Coin and Penos Banos, which is the atoll where Misli Mandarin, the First Minister appointed by the Chagosian people, is currently situated, he should know that it's nowhere near Diego Garcia. It is over 120 miles away from that military base. It poses no threat. The people on those islands pose no threat to security or to the military base at Diego Garcia. This is a sham. This government and the last government have been denying the truth. The truth is that the Chagosian people are British and they should be given the same rights of self-determination that the Falkland Islanders, the Gibraltarians and all British overseas territories rightly deserve.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm rather old-fashioned. The territory he refers to is within the British Indian Ocean territories. The law that applies to the whole of the territory. The travel advice, which I'm not sure the Honourable Member for Clacton acquainted himself with before he travelled, is clear on all of the islands. And so I understand that he is making a point about geographic distance, but the sovereignty and the law applies nonetheless. On the question of Chagosian representation, the Honourable Member will know that there is considerable disagreement within that community and that the Prime Minister to whom he refers is not internationally recognised.
Oliver Dowden.
I genuinely have respect for the Minister, as he knows, but I'm also very confused as to the government's position, because as he will know from his time in the Foreign Office, one of the principal issues to which he refers is the fact that the previous US administration was not comfortable with the disputed status of this territory under international law. But it's now clear that the current President of the United States has no such concerns, has no such qualms. So given those circumstances, why are we continuing to burn capital with the current administration rather than saying, let's put this whole thing on hold and look for a solution that might actually work better both for the United States government and the interests of the United Kingdom?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm grateful to the Honourable Member for his question. To be clear about the current position, as he knows, there was support for the US, from the US administration for this treaty, which has not changed. There clearly has been a statement from the President of the United States more recently, which is very significant. And as I told the House, we are now discussing those concerns with the United States directly. We have a process going through Parliament in relation to the treaty. We will bring that back to Parliament at the appropriate time. We are pausing for discussions with our American counterparts.
Sir John Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Whatever members across this House might say the member for Clacton's done a service to us in raising this matter today, because this is a dodgy deal founded on a bogus basis. Let me explain, Member Speaker. When this was introduced to the House, we were told that it was done, the government were doing so on the basis they'd be sanctioned internationally. And in particular, they described the most proximate and most potentially serious as the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. In subsequent written questions, I discovered that far from that, and I quote the answer to the question, the stance on Article 298 remains unchanged from prior declarations of 2003 and 2020, which means we can opt out. There was no obligation, no necessity, and I have to say, Mr. Speaker, and I use these words cautiously, because I know and like the Minister, and I know and like the Secretary of State Defence. It seems to me this House was inadvertently misled in the original statement, as is proved by the subsequent answers to written questions. So will the Minister clarify that urgently, because it is a very serious parliamentary matter and a matter of national significance?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the honourable member is a colleague in Lincolnshire, so I don't like to disagree with him, including on the value of the honourable member's weekend trip. On this question of 298, I can hear the strength of views across the House. As I understand it, this is a particularly complex and contentious area of law. I hear the House's desire for further clarification from the government, and I'm sure the relevant minister will be very happy to write. I am not the relevant minister. I'm the Minister for the Middle East, as you know.
Alistair.
Just to continue on this theme, it was only a few months ago that this House was told that if we didn't approve this treaty, there would within weeks be binding international judgments against us. What international tribunal was ever capable of ruling on a military base? What tribunal was the government talking about? Because we know that the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea has no jurisdiction on military bases and no jurisdiction on sovereignty. So what on earth was the government trying to persuade this House about?
Madam Speaker, again, there is this desire to suggest that there was no issue, that the 11 rounds started by the previous government were done for no reason, and that there was not substance behind our concerns, no substance behind the support. I quote from US Secretary Hegseth: "This is a vital military base for America. The UK's very important deal with Mauritius secures the operational capabilities of the base and key US national security interests. We are confident the base is protected for many years ahead." We were engaged with a real problem, seeking to find a real solution. If members would like more on some of the particulars around 298, which I have heard and I've committed that we will write, then we're very happy to provide it. But this is not a new argument about this treaty.
Dr. Andrew Morrison.
How much political capital is this government prepared to burn through with a highly transactional White House in order to secure more helpful language on the Chagos Islands?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, this government will seek to pursue Britain's national interests. We are sometimes going to disagree, as the Prime Minister has made clear, with our friends and allies in public. We will seek to resolve those issues in private, but the principles driving the decisions of the ministers of this government will be Britain's interests and our national security.
Rebecca Paul.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Minister for his statement, but I would suggest in future that the appropriate Minister is sent that can actually respond to our questions. But let's give this another go. Here's another straightforward question for you, for the Minister. Apologies. Has the government declined the US permission to use Diego Garcia and other UK bases, including Fairford, to launch strikes on Iran?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I thought it was rather disobliging comments about my preparedness, so I would encourage her to listen to my previous comments, which is I won't be drawn on operational questions for reasons which are about whether a specific RAF base is being used. Would you have, would the honourable members opposite have been drawn? I think they would not have.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
We have been saying for months that to give away the Chagos Islands and pay for the privilege is complete and utter madness. Having ran this through, we are now told that the government is taking, and I quote, a pause for thought. Can the Minister explain why the government signed off on this disastrous and disastrously expensive handover agreement without having thought about it first?
Minister.
Interesting that the honourable member starts with months. If we go back years, when she was a SPAD in the previous government and the talks were conducted, there was clearly recognition within the Conservative government that there was a real issue to be addressed. You pursued talks. You took them into text. You took them into...
Order. The two U's in one go, Minister. Have another go. Come on, off you go. Come on.
Madam Speaker, I apologise. I am failing again. The honourable member will appreciate the scepticism on this side of the House when the Conservative government started this process, when two American administrations recognised that there was a real issue to be addressed here, when this American administration supported the steps that we had taken in May.
Thank you,
Madam Deputy Speaker. I would push back slightly on what the Minister is saying. As we know, the discussions between the UK and the Government of Mauritius around the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands started in January 2009 under the previous Labour government, as confirmed to me by the Minister for the Overseas Territories. So I think you might want to bear that in mind. But the question that I want to raise is around Jonathan Powell, the National Security Advisor, who prior to being the National Security Advisor was the Prime Minister's Special Envoy to the British Indian Ocean Territories and still is today. Prior to being appointed on the 6th of September, he conducted meetings with the FCDO. He'd confirmed that he has already seen the deal prior to being in post and was then given a hard copy of the deal when he reached Port Louis. When did he attend Port Louis? Was it prior to his appointment as the PM Special Envoy? And what security clearance did he have when he saw the Chagos deal for the first time?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, on the honourable member's first question about when talks started, as I understood it, it started on the Conservative government, but I'm very happy to check the Foreign Office record and come back on that question. Whether they were started in 2009 or indeed in 2010, that was, if I may say so, quite a long period in which the Conservative government was in charge, in which this strength of feeling was not demonstrated, and indeed other honourable members did not raise these issues in their time. Well, the suggestion, if I may say so, Madam Deputy Speaker, from the Conservative benches that they were vociferously against this, they just took 11 occasions to try and work that out, doesn't feel very plausible to me. But the honourable member asked me some specific questions about the Jonathan Powell's work as an envoy. I thought I answered the first set of questions.
What a question, Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for his answers? If the Minister was a goalkeeper, he would be tired out and exhausted at this stage. But maybe he's kept the ball out of the net. But we'll see how that goes. You know, the Minister will forgive me for being a bit obtuse. But it was my understanding that the leasing of the base at massive cost to the working person in this country was to secure national interest and safety. Forgive me, I therefore cannot grasp why government would possibly be working against our greatest ally, the US of A, and sending an internationally resounding message to outline that our base cannot be used if it is deemed necessary. So will the Minister please do this, outline what discussions have been held in the last number of days to correct any belief that we do not stand fully with our American allies?
Madam Deputy Speaker, the honourable member usually thanks me for my tone and on this occasion, so I'll reflect on that afterwards. He asked me about sensitive security discussions between the United States and the United Kingdom, and I'm not really in a position to be drawn. We do discuss questions of Middle East security with the United States. The Foreign Secretary set out very clearly at the Security Council the malign influence that Iran, which is what I think he is referring to, have played in the region, and our efforts to ensure that they do not get a nuclear weapon. A diplomatic solution is the most desirable, and that is what we're working towards.
That is the end of the urgent question. Point of order, Sir Edward.
A point of order on this specific urgent question. You or your advisers, Madam Deputy Speaker, will be aware of a letter that I and my colleagues have sent to the Speaker about this issue, particularly pertaining to the apparent discrepancy between answers given in this House on the 22nd of May and in a written question on the 12th of February. The Minister said that he was not able to answer that, although in my long experience in this place, ministers are bound by collective responsibility and therefore they answer for the whole government. I give notice, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I will give... The Minister has said he wants an answer to be given on this point. I give notice, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I will give the government time to consider, and on Monday morning I will put in for an urgent question specifically on this discrepancy of the information given to the House.
The father of the House, no doubt, has a huge amount of respect across the whole House, and the father of the House knows that we don't discuss urgent questions publicly, let alone on the floor of the House, so that was a slight error on his part. Let me just deal with this point of order. The honourable member also knows that the Chair is not responsible for the content of the responses provided by ministers, if only we were, but he has no doubt most robustly got his point on the record. Point of order, James Cottley.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And just further to that very point, and there is a concern on this side at least, that we have heard repeatedly from the Minister that he is not the correct Minister for responding to the questions we have asked. Our understanding procedurally is that ministers are accountable to Parliament and that in coming before Parliament they are here to be held to account. The key question, just to remind you, Madam Deputy Speaker, which refers to the previous point of order, is about the fact that the Secretary of State for Defence last May said that Diego Garcia would be weeks away from a legal ruling unless this treaty was agreed to. We are concerned on this side that that is not correct, that he may have inadvertently misled the House, because under Article 298 of UNCLOS, it provides an opt-out for binding rulings in relation to, and I quote, military activities. It's a fundamental legal question on the treaty. We should surely have a minister in front of us who can answer questions on the treaty.
I thank the honourable member for giving me notice of his point of order. First of all, the Chair is not responsible for which minister the government puts forward to respond to an urgent question. If the minister wishes to respond at this point to the urgent question, he chooses to do so. Okay.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I hope the House will beg my forgiveness. As the House knows, I am the Middle East Minister. I'm on this occasion the duty minister, so I am here to answer any question that I can, but where I think greater precision can be provided in writing, rather than risking providing the House anything other than the fullest possible answers, I think that is appropriate. As it happens, the Minister responsible for the bill is travelling back to the UK today. He would have been more than delighted, I'm sure, to answer this urgent question, but not being in a position to do so, I want to ensure the House gets properly precise answers.
The honourable member may not be satisfied with the response, but that is a response nonetheless. We will not continue the debate. Point of order, Ben Obsujecti.
Madam Deputy Speaker, on the 9th of February, I asked a specific name-day question around the role of Jonathan Powell in the Chagos Islands deal that was due for answer on the 12th of February. It is now the 25th of February, and it still hasn't been responded to by the government. How can I best encourage the government to produce timely and accurate answers to name-day written questions on this subject?
I'm sure the Treasury front bench, including the ministers, are hearing this. It's just not good enough when members are putting in bits of information, putting in written ministerial questions, and those responses are not coming back in a timely fashion. I can see the Treasury front bench and the ministers nodding. One can assume that a response will be forthcoming very, very quickly. And the member's got his point on the record as well. Now, we don't want to continue the debate. I think we can allow the front benches to shuffle over so we can start the next urgent question.
Right.